Hello and welcome to the MAC weather page for this Friday, September 1st, and today we'll have the fall outlook, and then on Monday we'll take a look at what this winter may bring. And if we look at the current conditions, however, across the area, very chilly morning out there, temperatures in the 40s, and we're going to see plenty of that, especially for next week. Now we're going to warm up over the weekend here, over the Labor Day weekend, and we'll see high temperatures well into the 70s and probably around 80 on Sunday, and then in the low 80s on Monday. And with a strong cold front approaching the area, look for a good chance for showers and thunderstorms on Labor Day afternoon into Labor Day night. And then we'll see much chillier conditions dominate the weather for later next week. And we take a look at the weather map this morning. You can see high pressure system is well in control of our weather, and we expect that to be the case right on through the weekend. And as that high slides off to the east, the cool temperatures we've seen over the last few mornings is going to moderate, and we'll see temperatures mainly in the 50s to around 60 over the weekend for lows, and highs in the 70s to around 80, and then low 80s as we get into Monday. And you can see on the Saturday forecast, again, system coming in from the west will be pretty weak. Most of the energy will be well off to the north. So much of the MAC and LAC areas across central, southern, lower Michigan should see plenty of sunshine, and again, moderating temperatures tomorrow into the 70s. And then again, as we get into Sunday with high pressure off to our east, nice flow coming around to the south, that's going to bring us some pretty warm temperatures. But here comes the big change, as a cold high pressure system will be pushing this system into the area as we get into Monday. And again, out ahead of us, some pretty good showers and thunderstorms will occur. So a really good chance of rain, I think, as we get into Monday afternoon and into Monday night. And then the forecast map for Monday shows that cold front approaching the state with high pressure off to the east. And again, we're going to see a predominantly northwest flow after that for all of next week, with temperatures struggling to get into the mid 60s with lows in the 40s. And some of the colder areas will get down into the 30s, and some of those really normally colder areas may even see some frost here later next week. On the 3 to 7 day hazardous outlook, you can see we're going to expect a tropical or subtropical system come out of Mexico and move up towards the Gulf states, and that could bring some more heavy rains from Louisiana over into Florida, Georgia, and in parts of South Carolina, and that'd be in the day 3 to 7 area. Very warm conditions out west, and very cool conditions across the east. And we expect we're going to be watching what could be what is Hurricane Irma move in and really become quite a threat, I think, to portions of the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and certainly those areas. And eventually, we're going to have to really be concerned about the areas from the eastern Gulf states into the Carolinas and up the mid-Atlantic. This is going to be a potentially major tropical system, and we'll certainly keep an eye on it over the next several days. But this would be for late next week. We're going to really want to keep an eye on this. And again, it could be a major weather event for the U.S. and maybe headline making. You can see the current condition or current area where the Irma currently is, and you can see over the next 5 days it's going to continue to be a major hurricane as it marches off to the east. And eventually, again, we expect it to come in. It could go into the Gulf of Mexico, or it could curl up into the Carolina areas. But again, that's a long ways out right now, but something certainly we're going to be following here over the next 5 to 7 days. And you can see for the 6 to 10 day outlook, you can see much of the Midwest all the way to the Gulf states is going to be in a troughed area. We expect conditions to be about 10 to 15 degrees below normal. And again, very chilly weather. Meanwhile, it's going to be very warm to hot out west. And in the 8 to 14 day outlook, we finally start to see a little bit of this breakdown, perhaps in the day 12, 13, and 14, as we expect eventually some warm air is going to be coming into the eastern U.S., but probably not until that tail end of that 8 to 14 day outlook. And then for mid-month, we expect temperatures to be warm across much of the eastern U.S. And whether or not we can turn September from a very chilly month at the beginning to a above normal month, that's to be seen. But certainly the coldest air of the month is going to be in the first half, and then we expect warming conditions for much of the middle and end of September. And if we look at the 6 to 10 day precipitation, again, below normal. Same with the 8 to 14 day outlook, below normal precipitation for us in the Great Lakes. So any harvest activity that's out there, whether it be sugar beets or beginning of edible beans, should have no problems with beginning. Now, as we look at the longer term forecast, we get our analog years as we go back. We look at where we're at, where we've been, and where some of the models are forecasting, and we come up with the analog years. And these are the analog years that we're going to be using for this year, and for not only for the fall, but right now for the winter as well. And we'll keep an eye on that. Those could change a little bit, but for the fall outlook, that's what we've got. Now, when we talk about the INSO, we refer to mostly INSO 1, 2, and 3 or 4. You hear me talking about, whether it's in the eastern portions of the Pacific or the western, and where the ultimately the warmest or coolest temperatures set up often determine where some of the big blocking highs or lows quite often will be, and that circulation around those has an effect on the long term, what we might expect. Now, the September outlook from NOAA has gone down to an equal chance. 15 days ago, this forecast was to be for a very warm September across much of the U.S., but with the obvious cold weather we're expecting here over the first 10 to 14 days of the month, you can see they've now brought that to an equal chance, because we do expect, although we're going to be very cold over the next 10 days, we expect that we're going to see quite a bit of warming as we get into the middle and end of the month. So we'll keep an eye on that, but certainly the coldest temperatures of the month are going to be at the very beginning. So if we look at over the upcoming months as far as the INSO event, you can see most of the forecast models across the world are indicating that we're going to be in a neutral, whether it be positive or negative neutral event. So again, this has been kind of the pattern where we wavered between a weak El Nino to a weak La Nina. Again, this is expected to continue right on through much of the winter into the spring. And the same, this is the mid-month forecast, so again, shows very much a similar forecast as far as the INSO event to be remaining in a negative state. And again, that's generally, as far as the fall, is a fairly decent warm pattern for the Great Lakes here in Michigan. And for the winter, that usually means the potential we could see a pretty active and potentially cold winter as well here when we're in the neutral pattern. Now, last year, you can see we had a lot of cold water that streamed from Asia into the Pacific, into the northern Pacific areas, and that does not really promote much in the way of high pressure, more or less at low, and that sends more of a zonal flow across much of the U.S. And again, with very warm conditions right off the eastern seaboard, that also promotes a high off there. So we had a lot of things going against cold temperatures last year, but we did have a fairly good amount of snow in some areas. Here in Breckenridge, we were about 8 inches below normal, but we expect that with the outlook now and the current conditions, we see much warmer waters across the Gulf of Alaska, and there is some cold water out there, but certainly not to the extent that we had last year. And also, some of the warmest waters are now a little farther off to the east, so this should be a pretty good feature as far as a cold winter goes, and a potentially stormy one, especially when we look at some of the analog years. Now, as far as, again, the forecasted by the models, you can see almost 2/3 of the odds are that we'll continue to stay in that neutral event, and that's what the model showed on those charts that I had earlier. If there's any trend in the longer term, it's a slowly increasing odds that we may eventually go into an El Nino, much more so than chances of it going back to a La Nina. And right now we are kind of in a colder state, but again, we expect in the long term to either be neutral or maybe possibly going into a weak El Nino as we get deeper into the winter and spring months. As far as the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center for the months of September, October, and November, again, looks like warm across much of the U.S., and again, that is a favorable pattern when you look at the INSO event that we were talking about. And as far as precipitation, just a little bit better chance of wetter than normal across the Gulf states and southeast and parts of Texas. And again, for us, an equal chance across the area. In fact, this pie chart is actually for Lansing, and it shows pretty much a 1/3 of chance for either equal or normal amount of precipitation or above or below. So again, looks like a near normal precipitation with above normal temperatures forecasted for the fall months of September, October, November. And so it looks like it's going to be a decent fall for harvest as we get started here over the next couple of weeks. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Have yourself a great day, a great weekend, and 73s to all.